Hello, everybody, and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. Once again, we have David Warner Mathisen with us, my husband. Dave, it's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here, Kesenya. Hello to everyone.
And for those who aren't aware, Dave is an expert mythologist and astrotheologist as well. Dave has written 11 books on the mythologies around the world and how they all link up together and they correspond to the constellations of the sky. It's truly fascinating, this ancient worldwide system. If you would like to know more, there's links in the description to Dave's courses, to Dave's books, and his websites as well. And currently, Dave, you are running Kung Fu classes in the San Francisco Peninsula area for anybody who is interested. How's that going for you?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm right here in Los Altos, California, which is in the Bay Area. I grew up here in the Bay Area, and after many years of traveling and living in different places, we are back in the Bay Area, and I have a Wing Chun school right here in Los Altos. So if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, come check it out.
And your Kung Fu lineage is from Ip Man, I understand, which many people will be familiar with due to the movies.
That's right. Ip Man Sifu, and specifically from the lineage of Duncan Leung Sifu. Duncan Leung learned from Ip Man. Duncan Leung Sifu still lives in China, but he lived in Virginia Beach for many decades and raised his family there and taught Wing Chun there. And I started in 1992 in North Carolina when I was in the 82nd Airborne at Fort Bragg as a young
Fantastic.
22-year-old.
You know what I just found out this morning, and I have shared this with you already, but for people who have an afflicted eighth house, which can sometimes manifest as the sun being in the eighth house, one of the remedies for a sun in the eighth house person to get more joy out of life and less crisis out of life is to actually practice martial arts. So it's very interesting to me because I know that's where your sun is. So absolutely fascinating how astrology always lines up with how we live our lives. It's amazing.
Yeah, when you read that to me this morning, the actual description that you found was very interesting. But anyway, thanks for mentioning that. And
My pleasure. But today we are looking at the story of, I can never say it right, Epimetheus. Am I saying that right? Epimetheus?
well, if I was a Greek scholar, which I'm not, Greek is a fascinating language, ancient Greek. That EUS is, you're saying it right, the way we say it in English, Epimetheus and his brother Prometheus. But if you look at the name of the god Zeus, Zeus, that EU is actually a diphthong that makes this kind of oo or u sound like Zeus. So it's really probably Prometheus, not two syllables, but all together. Same as Odysseus, but we often say Odysseus,
Hmm.
Prometheus. We don't say Zeus for Zeus, though. So we get that right. Anyway, Prometheus is the way I say it. Epimetheus, his brother, we'll talk a little bit about him today.
And the reason that we're going to be talking about these two wonderful figures of ancient mythology is because astrologically in the sky, or and astronomically in the sky, the planet Mercury is currently starting this week his Epimetheus I hope I said that right again. Cycle. Now, for those who aren't aware, Dane Rudyard, gosh, I'm having trouble with my words today. Funnily that we're talking about the Mercury cycle. Um, Dane Rudyard talked much about the particular cycle of Mercury and equated it to these two brothers in ancient mythology. Interesting that Mercury also rules Gemini, which is about the twins. So, absolutely fascinating correspondence there. But Dane Rudyard described the Mercury cycle as being sort of two phases. Now, I talk about this cycle of Mercury in my astro weather report this weekend. So you'll get the specifics. You'll also get an explanation on the astro wheel to visually comprehend what I'm talking about here. But essentially, the Prometheus cycle, as put forward by Dane Rudyard, the Prometheus cycle of Mercury is when Mercury goes from cazimi to combustion. And we're just entering this week into the Epimetheus cycle of Mercury, which is the backward looking, the reflective, the reviewing energy of Mercury. And that runs from combustion to cazimi. So do check out my astro weather report for the more nitty-gritty details on how the astronomy works. But when we're in this Epimetheus cycle, we are looking backward over our past, and we may even see actually a lot of fruit and harvest for things that we established and planted during the Prometheus forward-looking cycle. So it's likened, this Epimetheus cycle, it's likened to a farmer who's sown his seed. And now he's going to sit on his front porch and watch the rains come and the sun shine and the crops come up and harvest them during this Epimetheus cycle, because the hard work of establishing and initiating the crop is done. I love any parable that corresponds to farming culture because that's my background. But that is just in a nutshell why we are talking about the cycle of the two brothers, Epimetheus and Prometheus, this week, because we're moving into a new phase of Mercury. The Prometheus phase started on the 9th of March, and on the 14th of May this week, we're going into the Epimetheus phase, and it will conclude on the 29th of June. So we've got a few weeks in this phase. It's going to be very interesting. But do check out the Astro Weather Report. Now I'm going to hand over to Dave to explain more about the mythology behind the two brothers and how that might actually pertain to our lives through the mythology.
Well, thank you. That's fascinating about those two cycles. I didn't know that it's the reason we're talking about them is related to this Mercury argument from an astrologer, but it's very interesting, and we'll see what connections come out in the examination that I've prepared to share with everybody, showing the stars. So, for those who've joined us before, you know my work for the past 16, 17 years has focused on the overwhelming evidence that the myths, the ancient myths from around the world, are based on the stars. And that sounds maybe even obvious, based on the stars. But then some people who think a little deeper might say, wait, what does that actually mean based on the stars? What are you saying? I mean, the characters, the figures in those myths, the gods, the goddesses, the princesses, or the evil kings are all based on specific constellations, often zodiac constellations, but not always. And there was this ancient system that was using all these different constellations to give messages through the myths to us and to tune us in to what's going on in the heavens and the cycles and how it affects our lives. So it's a very deep, broad subject because it's worldwide, the myths all around the world. And we focused on a few Greek myths. We've also looked at the Bible stories.
Mm.
All the stories in the Bible are also the characters in there. I know there's not gods and goddesses running around in the Bible, but there's King David and Bathsheba. So the in some systems it's different gods and goddesses. In other systems it's different characters in the stories, but they can be shown to relate directly to the constellations. So who could Prometheus be? Who could Epimetheus be? And what does it have to do with our lives? So these are some interesting figures, and we will delve into again the Greek myths. But what I want to emphasize is we could talk about the myths of ancient China. We could talk about the myths of ancient Japan, ancient Sumer, Babylon, Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Maya, the stories of all the different nations of the North American tribes of the Native American Indians, the Pacific, the stories of Maui,
Mm.
and all the different adventures that he gets into. Anyway, it's around the
Should
world.
do that in the future as this
Yes.
series unfolds. I think that'd be
But
wonderful.
we're talking about Prometheus and Epimetheus. So that's a Greek myth. And actually it's related really to almost we could call it the Adam and Eve story of ancient Greece. So the mention of Prometheus and Epimetheus comes about in some of the very early Greek texts that we have, and they're poetic. So a lot of ancient myth in cultures around the world is transmitted through poetry or verse. The Vedas of India are all verses.
Mm.
The, Bible verses, we could think of Bible verses. The poems of ancient Greece, the Theogony of Hesiod or the Iliad and the Odyssey, those are great poems. In the Norse myths, it's the Eddas. So these are, for some reason, the way it's transmitted is through poetry. And in these very early texts of Hesiod, he talks about the creation of the world. And there's an ancient battle between the earliest rulers were the Titans, and then came the Olympian gods, and there was this giant battle between them, and the Olympian gods vanquished the earlier rulers. And we see this in other myths. There's kind of an early ancient battle that's even before the myths begin. Same thing in the Norse myths. There's the Vanir gods and the Aesir or Aesir gods, and they battle each other, and the Aesir gods come out as the rulers of heaven. And but there's this ancient battle that is kind of lurking in the past of all the myths. So Hesiod talks about this, and he talks about the creation of humanity was done by Prometheus. Prometheus was the first to create men out of clay and give them, a heart and, you know,
I love Prometheus. He's my favorite, I
yeah,
think, of
he's
all the mythological characters because he actually loves human beings,
He's
which
very, and he's heroic, and he wants humanity to survive. But his brother Epimetheus, so Prometheus looks forward into the future, as you mentioned, and Epimetheus, his name means looking backwards. And Epimetheus creates all the animals, and he gives them all these different gifts. He doesn't have a lot of forethought. He just is backward looking, and he doesn't plan very well, and he basically gives all the gifts to the animals. And then when it comes time for the mankind to get gifts, sorry that being the fastest is already given away, being the strongest is already given away, being the most ferocious. So mankind doesn't have much in the way of gifts compared to the animals. It's interesting how you mentioned martial arts, in the
Mm.
Chinese martial arts, they talk about the different animals, being like a leopard or being like a
Yeah.
dragon or being like a snake or a crane, because we have to try and recover those gifts or imitate our brothers in the animal kingdom who got all the, the gifts
Mm.
of speed and strength. No matter how fast how much you train to be faster, you'll never be as fast in your reflexes as a snake. A snake has faster reflexes than a human, about 5 times faster, but a cat is like 10 times faster or even twice as fast as a snake. So anyway, we'll never be that fast, but we can learn from them. But Epimetheus gave away all the gifts, not very good planning on his part. And so Prometheus says, how will these poor humans, they don't have warm coats of fur like, a seal can swim in
Mm.
the cold, cold ocean. We need a wetsuit. How are we going to keep up with the animals or even survive? Prometheus says, mankind needs fire. And
Mm.
so by this point, Zeus, is ruling Olympus. And
Because, and you mentioned this when we were discussing earlier today, Prometheus and Epimetheus were titans,
yes,
not Olympian gods. So they came before, they're from a time before the Olympian gods
Yes.
ruled. So
And
now
actually, I
Zeus
have
is
a
in charge. Mm.
that's it. That is important. I've got actually a little family tree to show
Oh,
where they
good.
fit
Okay, great.
in. So here is from, again, the Dolaire's book that I shared the last time when we were talking about some of the myths from ancient Greek. I grew up with these books of the Greek myths by the Dolairs, and they have another one that's about the Norse myths. But here's their depiction of Prometheus coming down to mankind. He's created mankind, but mankind doesn't have the gifts. They've been all given away by Epimetheus. So Prometheus asks Zeus for permission to give fire to mortal man. And Zeus says no. Fire is for the gods. And so what does Prometheus do? He steals fire. He steals the fire from the forges of Hephaestus, who is the god of fire, the god of smiths, blacksmiths, and metalwork. In the Roman or Latin, he's called Vulcan, the god of the forge and the fire. And so Prometheus steals a spark and hides it in the stalk of a giant fennel, the stalk of a giant fennel, which is kind of like a large hollow
Mm.
plant that's it's got like a pith inside of it apparently that can keep a spark for days and keep it hidden. And he sneaks the spark, the divine spark, down to mankind. So the spark comes from Hephaestus, the and the some of the ancient Greek hymns, the Orphic hymns, honor Hephaestus as the giver of that spark of fire, that divine soul or spark that we have. It originally comes from Hephaestus, but it was Prometheus who brings it down to
Mm.
mankind. And that's what's depicted here. And it's interesting. It almost looks like they've depicted Prometheus. There's a parting of the clouds. It's like he's coming down
Yeah,
from the Milky Way.
true.
If if you if you
Can
see,
I ask a
yeah, go ahead.
divergent question?
Hmm.
Prometheus and Epimetheus, are they at all related to Enki and Enlil in the Sumerian myths?
Well, it's possible. Enki is that befriender of mankind, and
Mm.
there are a lot of parallels in all of these myths.
Mm.
And Enki is the one who provides an ark, who helps, the
Them
the
escape.
Mesopotamian version of the Noah story to
Right.
survive. And that is related to Prometheus and Epimetheus, as we'll get to in a
Awesome.
little bit. But the first woman, um,
We can get to it
yeah,
shortly.
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. Um, the answer is I am convinced that the myths and the characters in the myths are based on the stars. I am not always 100% sure or dogmatic about this character relates to this one. In some cases, there's enough evidence to be dogmatic and very sure. In other cases, I'm more cautious. I don't just lay it out like I'm positive about it
Yeah.
unless I've got a lot of evidence.
That's very
So,
humble of you. And
well, thank you. And so when it comes to the Prometheus and Epimetheus stories, as you'll see, you wanted to talk about Prometheus and Epimetheus. It's not a myth that has enough detail to be super dogmatic in every case, but in some cases, we can be pretty certain.
okay.
Enki and Enlil, I'm certain as to which constellations they're related to,
Mhm.
um, but it was outside
Let's
the
not go
scope of
down
this
that rabbit
conversation to,
hole.
to get into
Let's
them.
stick with what we're talking about. It just crossed my mind.
But
So,
it's a very good thought, and we will see some evidence for a connection between Prometheus and the constellation that I believe is Enki in a
mhm.
moment. But first, hopefully you can see the stars. Everyone can see the stars that I've got as a background. One possibility that I've talked about in some of my previous books for the identity of Prometheus, bringing this flame down to mankind, is a constellation that you see on your screen here. And now you mentioned the brothers, Prometheus and Epimetheus, and one of them looks forward and is a little bit
Mm.
brighter than his brother. You could uh, argue for a possibility for Castor and Pollux, the two bright stars of the twins of Gemini. That's the twins of Gemini
And here
right
we are
there.
with Mercury being the source of that, ruling Gemini. So, sorry, keep going.
Well, it is interesting. And the Mercury obviously governs speech and he's a trickster. He uses his words to he's a messenger. He brings about, in the messenger of the gods. It's interesting that these two flames, Castor and Pollux, well, these two figures have like flames on top of their heads. And then there's a Bible story where flames come down in the book of Acts and rest on top of the heads of everyone who's present at this feast of Pentecost.
Mm.
And that's where they are given tongues, or the Feast of Pentecost commemorates this um, this event
Tongues of
of
fire.
yeah,
Mm.
the gift of tongues, yeah, the little fires that come down. Well, that's I've talked about in a blog post many, many years ago, clearly related to the Gemini twins, Castor and Pollux are associated with that story in the Bible,
Hmm.
and Mercury being associated with speech, and that story being associated with, the
Tongue.
gift of tongues or speaking in different languages is is very very interesting connection. But as it relates to Prometheus and Epimetheus, if they're related to the Gemini twins, Prometheus would probably be Pollux. That's the brighter of the two stars of the twins. And Castor would probably be Epimetheus. In the Greek myths, there are two brothers, Castor and Polydeuces or Pollux, and one is divine twin and one is a mortal twin. But we won't get into that story. I've also argued that Prometheus could very likely, when he's bringing the spark, bringing the spark down to mankind, be associated with the figure of Orion. And I'll just outline Orion here.
Of Orion, yes.
Orion is a towering figure, and we're familiar with his three stars of his Orion's belt, but also Orion has very bright stars. You can see not just the three bright stars, but the stars of his shoulders and his feet are bright. He's a very recognizable giant constellation, and he's holding over his head. The reason I kind of did the outline this way, he's holding over his head what looks like a club, but it could be maybe a stalk of fennel bringing down the fire because it's fairly dim. Those stars of the club, you need to be in a pretty dark sky to see them, but they may be hiding a spark in there because look at what's going through the club. That's actually the Milky Way, the
You were.
smoky,
Okay.
cloudy Milky Way. So it could be that there's a smoldering spark in that upraised arm in this myth, and that's
Mm.
Prometheus bringing the fire down to mankind. But there's really not enough evidence to be dogmatic
Mm.
that this is the correct matching of Prometheus. But I will tell you that when it comes to Prometheus, when he's bound, okay, because he gets in trouble, as you said, Prometheus really loves mankind. He wants to bring them fire so that we can survive. And fire, spiritually or symbolically has lots of other connotations, this divine spark. But he pays a price for it. And Zeus finds out what he's done. When he looks down on the earth and he starts seeing little fires popping up everywhere as the mortals start to warm themselves up by the campfire, he's furious.
Oh
And he
dear.
finds out what happened and he's going to punish Prometheus. And as most of us know, Prometheus is then bound and,
Chained to a rock.
and chained to a rock or a pillar. And I'm going to show you an ancient depiction of that. And so Prometheus is chained up and bound. In fact, there's even a play, an ancient play from Aeschylus, one of the Greek poets, called Prometheus Unbound, or
Wow.
yeah. So he's bound, and here's an ancient Greek depiction of Prometheus bound and being punished for this
Mm.
transgression of bringing the fire to mankind. So this is a Greek, it's called a kylix. That's what it looks like from the side.
Ah,
This is the same piece of ancient ceramics. That's the side view with the handles. And then if you look down into the bowl of it, that's where you see this
the draw.
depiction that the ancient artist has depicted. And what's going on in this picture from left to right, that's actually Atlas holding. Atlas is one of the Titans who's
Mm.
being punished. This was goes back to the rebellion against, the Titans versus the Olympians. Atlas had to hold up the vault of the heavens forever. And we actually talked about Atlas in the Pleiades. If people want to go back to our earlier conversation about the Pleiades, because I think was it Uranus was going through the
That's
Pleiades,
right.
or
That's
is.
right. Yes.
Atlas is the father of the Pleiades. And so we talked about Atlas and the identity of Atlas, and that starts at about 44 minutes into our Pleiades discussion if people want to take a look at that. But then on the right, so Atlas is there, I've labeled him. To the right side, as we're looking at the bowl, that's Prometheus. And you can see he is bound to a pillar behind him, hand and foot, and Zeus has given this punishment to Prometheus for what he did. Every day, an eagle devours the liver of Prometheus. Very painful. While Prometheus is bound alive, the eagle is eating out his liver.
Mm.
And then every night, the eagle flies away after having a big meal of liver. Prometheus's liver grows back. And it's interesting, the liver is apparently the only organ in the body that will
Regenerate.
regenerate. Yeah. So
Yes.
it grows back and then the eagle comes again. So every day Prometheus has to endure over and over the dreadful pain of being eaten alive and having his liver torn out by this giant eagle.
Mm.
Until eventually the hero Heracles or Hercules comes along and does slay the eagle with a bow and shoots the eagle and lets Prometheus go. But this really interesting depiction can help us identify Prometheus in the heavens, at least when he's bound. It may be that he's a different constellation when he's tied up and being devoured by the eagle. We'll see. But I want to point out it's interesting, this pillar, the shape of that pillar. I'm just going to kind of outline it. See how it's got a little kind of a
Yes.
bowl at the
Okay. I
top of
know
it.
where this is going.
Well, he's bound there to this pillar, according to
Mm.
this ancient artwork. And he's actually, it's interesting how he's tied up. You can see kind of the leather straps. If you
Mm.
look closely, they go around his wrists and they go to the pillar and they do this, interesting braided pattern, but then they go down to his ankles. So it's almost like there's two sets of straps binding Prometheus with his back to that pillar and the eagle, devouring him from the front.
Mm.
So I'll just show the straps for anyone who
Mm.
doesn't see them there. There they are. The two sets of straps, kind of in a not quite a V shape there, but might be important. I'll also point out there's actually two pillars. The artist has included two pillars in the artwork. If you look closely, there's the pillar that he's bound to with his
Yes.
back to it, but there's also a pillar right there.
Mm.
Interesting. Kind of two pillars. We do find that in the Bible as well. You know,
And it looks like two liars on either side of some description,
it does. There's some kind of artistic motif, or maybe those are just the straps that hold him to the pillars. I don't know what exactly those are, but it's very interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
And then we'll get to more of it, but certainly everyone can see the eagle. I don't need to point that out. So I think we'll just move that up here so I can bring in the stars of the night sky. Oh, it's interesting too, before we bring in the stars of the night sky, the artist has depicted Atlas and Prometheus. And if you, I brought in this family tree, remember
Very
I
good.
mentioned earlier. Yeah, down at the bottom, those are the Titans, the original children of Gaia, Mother Earth. If you look closely at the bottom, the green hills are
Mm-hmm.
actually in the shape of Mother
Oh, well,
Earth.
it's a woman. Yes, yes.
She's
Lying
reclining, looking
down.
upwards at all her children. Now, the Titans were not her first children. Hesiod, in his theogony that I mentioned, goes into the whole creation story. There's Gaia and Uranos, the god of the heavens. And their first children are the hundred-headed ones or the hundred-handed ones and the Cyclops. And Uranos, their father, did not like them and imprisoned them down in Tartarus. And that made Gaia very angry. So when she brought forth the next set of children, the Titans, they were not monstrous like the Cyclops or the hundred-headed ones, hundred-handed ones. They were, beautiful and well-formed. And she said, "Listen, I'm mad at your father Uranus. I want someone to punish him for what he did to my, firstborn children. Who will do it?" And none of the Titans was brave enough except for Kronos or Saturn. And he's the
Mm-hmm.
one who, went forth and against his father Uranus with the sickle, the adamantine sickle that Gaia gave to him. It was, such the hardest possible material it was made out of. But anyway, that was the original order was ruled by the Titans, and since Kronos, Saturn, was the bravest of them, he was the ruler. And so you see him there, and then his children were the Olympian gods, and he was the one who was eating them so that they wouldn't take over from him. And
Mm.
eventually, Rhea, the mother of the Olympian gods, Cronus and Rhea didn't like that. And after four of them had been devoured, she gave him a stone to eat and hid Zeus away so
Mm.
that Zeus could grow to manhood and then challenge his father, Cronus. But that's getting a little beyond our story, but let's just see where the Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus fit. They're down here. You can see one of the other Titans to the right as we look at it of Kronos. His name in Greek was Iapetos,
Okay.
Iapetos, which is Japhet or Japhet. It's written as Japet on this from the Dolaires, but that's the same as Japheth.
In
In the
the
Bible,
Bible.
you've got Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of
Wow.
Noah. So I said we're going to link back to
Mm.
this flood story. It's all related across the myths. But the three children of Japheth, or Iapetos in Greek, are, looking from top to bottom, Atlas with the beard,
Mm-hmm.
Epimetheus looking backwards
Yes.
in this artist depiction, and Prometheus. So it's interesting that this ancient Kylix has Atlas being punished by holding the heavens and
Prometheus.
Prometheus being punished for giving mankind fire.
Mm.
So now I'll bring in the stars. We have, like I said, in the Pleiades video, if you didn't watch that, viewers who are interested, go back and watch the Pleiades video to learn about the myths of the Pleiades. And their father was Atlas. And like I said, beginning at about 44 minutes into that video of the Pleiades, I give plenty of evidence to show that Atlas is associated with a specific constellation who's way up towards the top of the north celestial pole, holding up the heavens, and that is, you can see from the outline of Atlas in the ancient artwork, you saw it immediately when I showed you that plate. That's the outline of the constellation Hercules. There's no doubt that Hercules, or the figure of Atlas, is associated with Hercules. And I even talked about a myth where Hercules comes along and says to Atlas, "Hey, I need you to get the apples." And Atlas says, "Well, someone's got to hold up the heavens if I'm going to go get the apples." And Hercules says, "Okay, I will." So they're both the same constellation. They both take turns holding up the heavens. So Hercules is definitely Atlas. So who could Prometheus be, at least when he's bound, as in this ancient
Ophiuchus,
artwork.
perhaps?
Could it be
Could it
Ophiuchus?
be? I'm
Who
not saying it's Ophiuchus, but
Well,
Ophiuchus.
Ophiuchus is a very important character.
I'd say.
Ophiuchus, as we mentioned, is the one who comes down to dwell among mortals. See,
Mm,
Ophiuchus is the one with his
yes.
feet, one foot crosses the ecliptic. Ophiuchus is down amongst the mortals, but above the mortals as well.
Yes, I love it. I
A
love it.
very important figure. So that would be in line with Prometheus as he loves mankind. He's willing to come down from the heavens to give them this divine spark, but he's going to suffer for it. And there in the artwork, you see him suffering for it. But can you see the pillar on
Mm.
Ophiuchus? Look to the right side of Ophiuchus. Oh, wait, before we get to the pillar, what about an eagle?
Yes,
Is there an
Aquila.
eagle? If I say it's Ophiuchus, you shouldn't believe me just on my word alone. We've got to find clues. Is there an eagle nearby to devour his liver?
Mm.
Yes, right there. Aquila the eagle is right next to Ophiuchus,
Mm.
and he comes down to torment poor Prometheus bound up to the pillar. Ophiuchus, if you look at the constellation itself, is a central pillar or a central oblong, body
Mm.
with two serpent halves on either side. That's why it's called Ophiuchus. In Greek, it means the serpent bearer or the serpent holder. You can see those two serpent halves on either side of the central body. Those could be interpreted as chains or, you know, some kind of binding of he's a bound figure just in the sky. But also, this ancient artist has imagined Prometheus kind of chained with his back to this pillar. And
Mm.
the outline of that pillar that I showed everyone is
Yeah.
very much like the serpent half that I just outlined. The head of the serpent is like that's one of the pillars.
Mm.
Ophiuchus is in between two pillars. You can think of, two pillars of Solomon.
Mm.
Solomon is associated with Ophiuchus. I've talked about that a lot.
Samson.
Yeah, yeah, Samson is in between it. I have an online course called the Celestial Bible Tour where I go through these
Mm.
different stories of the Bible and talk about the connection to the
Correspondence to the stars.
heavens.
It's an amazing course. If anybody is interested in this theory, which is just so brilliant, do check out that course. Links will be in the description.
Thanks. So we've got the eagle, we've got the pillar, and even remember how I pointed out the shape of the straps that are holding him? Look at his hands and his ankles in the artwork, the ancient Kylix, the
Mm.
base. See how on the side of Ophiuchus, like there's two, on the side of that pillar, there's like two straps coming down holding, if if Prometheus is the central body and Aquila is coming down to eat his liver from the left, see how there's kind of the two straps going one way and
Oh,
the
I
other.
see. Yes. Okay. Yes.
So that is my argument that Prometheus, at least Prometheus bound, is associated with Ophiuchus. And
Mm.
Ophiuchus is the friend of humanity because the zodiac is where we all dwell. That's the plane of our existence. And that's why we have the different characteristics of the zodiac in our makeup.
Mm. Mm.
That's that's the plane of mankind. And Prometheus comes down to be our benefactor, but he pays a price for it. So then the story goes on. Epimetheus is going to be Zeus is not done yet. He also wants to, he's mad at Prometheus and he wants to punish mankind as well. So the creation of Pandora is done actually by Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the god of fire that we mentioned before.
Vulcan.
He's
Yeah.
he's the one who creates Pandora, the first woman. So apparently Prometheus created mankind, but it's kind of like in the Bible. There's, man made out of clay, but then wait a minute, it's not good for man to be alone, so we have to create Eve, the
Right.
first woman. Well, Same thing here. There's no women yet until Hephaestus creates Pandora. And so the god Hephaestus is going to create Pandora, and her name, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Let me just finish off this Kylix before we go to Pandora, because we're going to look at
Sure.
some ancient Greek artwork showing Pandora. But before I do that, let me show you the serpent. Oh, what do you know? We were just talking about Adam, Eve, Pandora, um, Hephaestus. There's a serpent in this ancient
Colors.
artwork.
Mm.
Really interesting. I didn't point it out before, but now we're going to transition. And look at that serpent. What constellation could that be? I'm going to point
Scorpio.
out again that Atlas is Hercules.
Hmm.
So above Hercules, there's actually a constellation which I'm going to outline here, Draco.
Ah,
So Draco is a little bit off the screen. It kind of makes this big hairpin turn and then has another big curve there. But it's very interesting to me, and I just noticed this as I was preparing for this
mm,
presentation with you today, Ksenia. I haven't noticed before. I've used this ancient artwork on this Kylix before, but I haven't noticed that that serpent is very, very reminiscent of the Serpent Mound in Ohio. So
oh,
there's a effigy mound, it's called, in the middle of the United States in modern day Ohio that's called the Great Serpent Mound. And I'm going to show it to you right here is an aerial view of the Great Serpent Mound. It's like 1,374 feet or something long. And it's an earthwork. And nobody knows exactly when it was laid out and when it was built. They think around 1100 to 1300, I think, is the AD is the, but it could be based on older, and it's attributed to the Adena culture, but there is genuine debate over who created these massive earthworks in Ohio and elsewhere in the Americas. But it is an amazing, beautiful earthwork, and it has these numerous bends, if you can see it there in
mm,
the aerial photograph, as it winds across, and it lines up with the solstice. And this year at June solstice, there's a Serpent Mound event
mm,
the sunset on the solstice aligns directly with the head of the serpent. And we'll be there. I'll be there at an event with the Grimerica Contact at the Canyons team and Brandon Powell, who's a Wim Hof instructor, master instructor, doing a big Serpent Mound event at solstice this year, June 21st. So we
mm.
should put some links to that as well.
There will be, there will be. But what's interesting to me, Dave, is that one end of the Serpent Mound has that sort of cup formation like the Ophiuchus figure.
Yeah, that coil.
Yeah, at the very top of the photo there.
Oh, right. You're absolutely right at the other end of the coil.
Yes.
So let me show another image of the Serpent Mound that's a diagram. It might be a little easier to see.
Hmm.
What's really interesting is there's a book by Ross Hamilton, and I met him the last time I was at the Serpent Mound was in 2017 at the solstice. Graham Hancock was there. I got to spend a lot of time with Graham, was talking about the solstice alignments as part of his research for his book, America Before.
Mm.
Ross Hamilton lives right near there, and he's written
Wow.
a book called The Mystery of the Serpent Mound. And I got to spend a lot of time talking to Ross about his analysis of the
Mm.
different mounds. He's done some amazing work. But you can see on the cover of the book, he's got the Serpent Mound
Hmm.
shape sketched out in the sky, and it says, "In search of the alphabet of the gods." It's really interesting. He argues that there's connections to actually the Greek letters in the Serpent
Oh,
Mound, which
wow.
is amazing because, like I said, I never noticed this Greek serpent, or I never connected that in my mind to the Serpent Mound. But since I'm going to speak at the Serpent Mound again in
At
2026,
solstice.
the last time I spoke there was almost 10 years ago. Just because this is coming up, I noticed in this, look at that connection. I mean, you could argue this is some evidence. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Mm, mm,
Some people may get upset and say, well, don't argue that there's a Greek connection to the Serpent Mound in the Americas. There is something going on that we don't fully understand. This is an ancient worldwide system,
mm.
and there's connections around the globe.
Oh, yeah.
This is not to take away from any one culture or another. This is to say we all are inheritors of some ancient system that has been forgotten or covered up. These connections are real.
Mm.
And what's really interesting is that Ross Hamilton in this book argues for a connection between Draco and the
Oh.
serpent. Now, the point you just made about the serpent head of Ophiuchus looking like the cup
Mhm.
is valid. But in this book, Ross Hamilton makes some great arguments lining up he says that that coil at the tail end of the serpent might line up with, you see how just above the letter
Yes.
H,
Yes, I can
there's
see
this,
it's like a
yeah.
little funny
So that's
shape.
how
Yeah.
he lines it up. Um, but anyway, you can kind of see the outline of the serpent in that diagram I drew, that
Mhm.
I added from Ross Hamilton's book,
Mm.
and see how it is very similar in shape to that serpent that's in the
Yeah.
ancient Greek kylix.
Well, it's all seems to be corresponding to that area of the sky. Even I said down below where there's another pillar
Mm,
in the Kylix, they've got that sort of two-pronged lyre shape. And we see right next to Hercules the constellation of the Lyre, that right there.
that's right.
You know,
Or also directly below Ophiuchus is Libra, and you can see that looks,
has the two prongs coming down, you mean the two
yeah,
scales?
and kind of a triangular top. But what exactly the ancient artist was doing with that second pillar down below their feet, I don't think we've got enough evidence to say for positive,
Mm.
but it's pretty positive that he is depicting
A celestial.
Prometheus bound as Ophiuchus and Atlas as Hercules. I have no doubt that Atlas corresponds to the constellation Hercules, and I have no doubt that Prometheus bound with the eagle corresponds to Ophiuchus and Aquila, the eagle in the sky.
Mm.
Now, just to finish off, I will touch on the story of the first woman. So
Mm.
Prometheus makes mankind, they need fire, he suffers for it, and then Zeus says, hey, we need to make the first woman to Hephaestus, and Hephaestus makes Pandora. But Zeus gives Pandora a gift, a box, Pandora's box. I'm sure everyone's heard of Pandora's box. And he
Mhm.
says, don't open it. Don't open it. And of course, her curiosity will overcome her. So let's go to the story of Pandora. Oh, there's the outline. I just put in the outline of Draco before we leave that. Let's go to Pandora in the myths just to finish off because Pandora is given to Epimetheus as a bride.
Mhm.
So the first the first woman, her name is Pandora, which actually means all, every single everything. Pan means everything, like
The
uh,
god Pan.
yeah, the god Pan, or we have it in a lot of different words, like pantheon means all the gods.
Right.
So Dora actually means gifts, like Theodore would be gift of God,
Yes.
Theos, or gift of Zeus, really. Theos or Dios is the same as Zeus, but Pandora is all good gifts. She has all good gifts because when she was created, when Hephaestus creates her, all the gods and goddesses come and give her gifts. They give her um, beauty. Aphrodite gives her beauty. Athena gives her skill at craft work like weaving and the arts that Athena rules. So she has been given all good gifts by all the goddesses. So she is a benefit to mankind, But Zeus also gives her this box, and he tells her, or jar, in some versions it's a jar. He tells her, don't look in the jar. Whatever you do, don't look in the jar. Now, um,
Doesn't he also give her insatiable curiosity?
yes, well,
Thanks, Zeus.
that goes without saying for a woman, right?
Ah, there you go.
Anyway, uh,
Well, it's true in my case. I do have.
you do have curiosity, but this is actually an ancient vase. It's interesting. In some ancient texts, it seems there's a connection between Pandora and Gaia. In fact, Pandora and Gaia are almost connected, and she comes out of the earth. She rises up out of the earth. So you can see in this ancient
Mm,
vase depicting the birth of Pandora, that's Pandora right there, and she's coming up out of the ground. You still can't see her whole body yet,
mm.
which is interesting. That's also how um, Mithras is born out of a rock. It's depicted in the same way in a lot of ancient artwork.
And
But
when
that's
we think about
Pandora.
it, Gaia has all good gifts for mankind, the
She has
plentiful, the
all the good
bountiful.
gifts. Now,
Yeah.
standing next to her, there's a figure who's actually, if you look closely, he's carrying a hammer. The handle point of the
Oh,
hammer is
yeah.
pointing up. The hammer, the big head of the hammer is right next to his leg, so it's a little bit hard to see. But that is Hephaestus, the smith or the blacksmith with his hammer, bringing Pandora up and giving her, I guess, the spark of life as well. And above the vase is that's usually described in the descriptions of this vase as Eros, the god of desire, and he's winged. He's actually carrying what's called a tanya or a tanya. That's a crown or a circlet, you know, to go around her forehead.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because if you look at Ophiuchus, now I'm not saying Pandora is Ophiuchus, um, but in this case where she's being depicted with her arms outstretched, that does look a bit like Ophiuchus. And the lower legs of Ophiuchus, those stars, are pretty faint. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be her coming up out of the ground because just above Ophiuchus is Hercules. Eros, the winged god, is in the basically the outline of Hercules and carrying a little crown or circlet. There is right in front of Hercules, and this is important in myth. I just outlined it, the northern crown, that little
Mm-hmm.
circlet in yellow. But that's not to say that I'm positive that Pandora is Ophiuchus. It's just the way this
Can see the
particular vase,
similarities.
yeah. It could be that she's associated with the beautiful Sagittarius, in which case the box, if you look over, that's a painting by John William Waterhouse,
It's
who's a
beautiful.
beautiful artist. He paints a lot of famous portraits, and you can see he's depicted her box, or this gift box that Zeus gave her, as kind of in the shape of Ophiuchus.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Can
Like
you
the
see it? It's got kind
triangle,
of two pillars with
the
feet
triangle
and a
head.
triangular top, and she's
Yeah, yeah,
peeking
yeah.
inside.
I
So
see.
maybe she's the beautiful Sagittarius, and she just can't not look inside that box. And of course, what comes out? All the vices
All
or
the not good gifts.
all the not good gifts,
Mm.
they immediately fly out and begin to torment mankind. Things like old age
Mm.
or self-sabotage or slander, gossip, greed, um, sickness, just all the things that we wouldn't want. Those all are attributed to this curiosity of Pandora. So it's very much like the first woman story in the Bible,
Mm.
Eve and the fruit. But there's one gift that's in the box that's actually in some of the myths or some of the ancient texts. It talks about Prometheus again, made sure that hope is in the
Stays
box
in the
too.
box. Hmm.
So, but and in the ancient text, it's kind of makes it sound like the hope being in the box or being kept in the box means that we always still have hope.
Yeah.
They actually portray that part as being positive. But I guess because it stays in the box, hope doesn't just automatically manifest into things.
Yeah,
But
it's also if the other things out of the box are tormenting mankind, hope will not be a torment to mankind. I don't know if that's true, but
we can ponder this myth a lot. It's definitely got a message for us. But let me show you a different part of the sky. And oh, let me show you one other. This is the a different image of
the same
the
story.
yeah, the creation story. That's Pandora in the top portion there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the goddess Athena is giving her the or Tanya, the crown. Tanya or Tania. I don't know exactly how they pronounced it in ancient Greek, but it's, this
Mm-hmm.
crown. And down below, interestingly, in the birth of Pandora, sometimes there are satyrs, goat, goat-headed, kind of sexually promiscuous figures. Can you see them down below? I'll put an
Mm-hmm.
arrow.
Yes.
They actually have little goat horns on their head if you look really closely. I don't know, you might have to
No, I can see
pause
them.
and
Yeah.
zoom in on your screen, but those goat horns are interesting because right next to Sagittarius is a constellation we all know,
Capricorn.
Capricorn, the goat. So there may be some argument that the beautiful Pandora with her, chest is Sagittarius, Ophiuchus being the Pandora's box, and Capricorn being the satyrs that are there present,
I see.
and the crown there up, that Eros is flying into her. But there's another portion of the sky. I think it is at least as likely that Pandora can be found. We've looked at this portion of the sky when we were talking in some earlier videos as well. But I just will quickly end on this. This is the constellation Perseus. Perseus is an important constellation, and I believe he is associated with Hephaestus, the smith.
Smith.
The because Perseus has twisted feet. Can you see that?
Yes, and so does
So
Vulcan
does
Hephaestus.
Hephaestus.
Yes,
And
yes.
because Hephaestus has twisted feet, he is usually depicted as riding on a donkey, on the back of a donkey.
Hmm.
And just below Perseus in the sky, oh, there's his two twisted feet. See, he was thrown down from heaven by one or the other of his parents. We won't go into the whole myth of
Save that one for another
Hephaestus,
time.
but yeah, he fell all the way down from Olympus, and his feet were twisted, and so he was the lame god, or he's crippled, and he makes a giant to ride on the back of a giant. That's um, almost certainly Orion, who you can just barely see rising to the bottom left. But he also is depicted in ancient artwork and on ancient coins riding on the back of a donkey with long ears. Donkeys have, or ass with
Hmm.
long ears. And we've talked about how Taurus,
Can
when we talked
sometimes.
about the Hyades,
Mm.
the V-shaped Hyades is the jawbone of the ass in the Samson story. That's in Taurus. Taurus with his long horns could also be a donkey or an ass with long ears. So that's a good argument that Hephaestus, with his twisted feet, is
Hmm.
associated with Perseus. Are
Yes,
you following along there?
got it. Hmm.
So if Hephaestus is present at the birth or the creation of Pandora,
Hmm.
could Pandora be the beautiful constellation that's right next to Perseus, known as Andromeda? Well, I believe she could. First of all, because of her proximity to Perseus, Hephaestus, but also there is a box right next to Andromeda. So if Pandora's box could be what? What? We're in between Pisces. Pisces is actually hard to see in the heavens, but this square is very easy to see right in between Pisces. It's the great square of Pegasus. See
Mm.
that great square right there?
Hmm. Hmm.
And Pegasus, the winged horse, that's his wing. You see the horse there?
Hmm. Yeah.
That could be hope or flying out of the box,
All the things flying out of
or
it.
all the winged things coming out of the box.
Hmm. Hmm.
And remember we talked about there's this weird presence of satyrs next to Pandora.
Mm, mm.
Well,
Yes.
I know this is hard to fathom, but actually, the satyrs are associated with Andromeda. Now, why would that be? Because the satyrs are depicted with this funny arched tail.
Mm-hmm.
They're also depicted, I mean, they're depicted in some pretty bawdy, randy artwork, okay? But that arched tail is a very distinctive feature of the satyrs. Now, look at Andromeda. You see her legs?
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of falling
She's
backwards.
falling
Her head is
backwards,
at
like,
the box.
mm.
Hmm?
She's,
Yeah,
I was just saying, reflecting that she's falling backwards
yeah,
and
she's falling backwards. Her upper leg is in the same arcing outline as the satyr's tail. Can
oh,
you
I
see
see.
that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm glad you did that. That helps. Yeah.
Well, and it seems like a stretch to people, but I'm quite confident with this because there are other myths, in particular the myth of King Midas. King
Mm.
Midas is definitely associated with Perseus. I won't go into why, but
We'll do that one another time too.
yes, he awards a satyr the the music prize in a contest between Apollo, the
Mm.
god of music, and the satyr Marsyas. Midas is asked to judge this contest, this music contest, and instead of awarding the prize to Apollo, the god of music, he awards it to Marsyas, the satyr. And Apollo says, that
Oh
is so
dear.
against the order of things. I'm the god of music. Nobody even has any skill at music unless I give it to them. How could you
Hey,
judge
that
him?
happens all the time in music competitions, if you
Yes.
ask me. Quite
Well, and
frankly, the wrong
very,
person
very
gets the
true.
prize every time.
Very true. Both in America and in Australia.
Funny about that, yes.
Yeah. You can see the Andromeda, she's holding up over her head. One arm has kind of like chains, little chains attached to it. Those are actually could be the panpipes of Marsyas.
Okay.
Well, Apollo is so angry with King Midas, he gives Midas ass's ears or donkey ears. That's associated with Taurus again. What does he do to Marsyas? He flays him alive. In other words, he hangs him upside down and skins him. So his skin is hanging off of him.
So that
That's
Pegasus
Perseus.
square could be like
That's
being
the skin.
pulled off, skin pulled off.
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
see.
I know it seems like a stretch to people if you haven't read all of my books over 17 years, but there's a Japanese myth where a horse gets flayed alive
Mm,
backwards, and that's Pegasus.
mm,
So the
mm,
Great Square could be flaying. Anyway, all I'm saying is there is evidence for Andromeda to sometimes be associated with a satyr,
mm-hmm.
and therefore, I would argue that's why satyrs are around in the artwork that shows Pandora, who's right
Yes.
next to Hephaestus. So I think Pandora could also be Andromeda, and Pandora's box could be the great square of Pegasus. And there's hope.
Well,
Pegasus is hope in the box.
I have a question because you said sometimes Pandora's box is represented as a jar, and
Mm.
there below all of
There
this,
below is,
Aquarius with a
yes,
jar and the water spilling out, like, or
and a
something
goat right
bubbling
next to
out,
him.
and a
Yeah.
goat right next to him. So I wonder if that's possibly.
You know, like I said at the very beginning, I'm dogmatic about some things where I've got a lot of evidence. I will be firm where I say I see a lot of evidence here and I'm very confident. There's other places where I will say, you know, that could be.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting. I wasn't really going to bring this up, but there is a passage in the Theogony that says at the doorway to Olympus, there are two jars, and one's filled with all good things and one's filled with all bad things. So
Sounds like
maybe they gave her the bad one, and maybe the good one is with Aquarius. I
that
don't
is
know.
interesting.
There's certainly jars around in this region of the sky. There's certainly a goat near to
I wonder if
Aquarius.
it's
So it's
like,
all happening in this area of the sky.
a bit like
Um,
two doors with all the nummy things behind.
let
For
me just
those who've
finish
seen
off.
Hunt for the Wilder People, you'll know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
that's from a Taika Waititi movie that everyone should know.
And
But
should watch.
the connection to the Noah's Ark flood is also present in this story because Pandora is the first woman. She's given to Epimetheus,
Mm,
who, by the way, in some versions of the ancient myths, Prometheus has told Epimetheus, don't ever accept a gift from Zeus. Because
mm,
Prometheus can see into the future. Maybe he doesn't see exactly what's going to happen, but he knows, if my brother accepts a gift from Zeus, it'll be bad for for mankind that I've created. So he tells Epimetheus, whatever you do, don't accept a gift from Zeus. But Epimetheus, when he sees Pandora, she's been given beauty
all the good gifts.
by Aphrodite. She's been given all these gifts by the goddesses. He can't resist. So
Mm.
that's how all these ills came upon mankind because through Pandora, it's not her fault. Zeus kind of set her up to bring these ills to mankind, but they have a child, Epimetheus and Pandora, who becomes the first woman. Well, the first fully mortal woman, I guess, is Pyrrha, Pyrrha, whose name means fire. Interesting, this is all related to Prometheus and the spark and the Hephaestus, the god of fire. And she becomes the wife of Deucalion. Remember, Prometheus made all these men.
Mm-hmm.
So Deucalion takes Pyrrha as his wife, and they are the Adam and Eve of the ancient Greek myths. When there's a flood sent upon the earth, only Deucalion and Pyrrha sail through in an ark.
Mm.
So,
So he's the Noah, not the Adam. You said the Adam.
right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you meant Noah and his wife.
Deucalion and Pyrrha are like Noah and his wife.
Yes.
Adam and Eve would be more like, I guess, Epimetheus and
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 Pandora.
and
But
Pandora. Yeah.
it's very, very interesting to me that the three brothers, Atlas, Prometheus, and Epimetheus, um, all get punished by
Hmm.
Zeus. Atlas has to carry the world on his shoulders. Poor Prometheus is having his liver eaten every day. And Epimetheus gets a woman? Like, I'm curious, and if anybody wants to make a comment on that or give not a negative comment, but just their idea philosophically, what that might be actually referring to. I don't think women are a punishment upon mankind, and certainly she was very beautiful with all good gifts. So it's just interesting. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Dave, as to why Epimetheus was given Pandora, which theoretically was a punishment.
These myths are they're definitely explaining to us the way the universe works.
Hmm.
It's not fair.
Hmm.
It's this is not describing what's fair. This is describing what is. My mother, the last uh, episode we did, or whichever episode it was that we talked about Persephone, I think it was the most.
Hmm.
She said, "Well, who's enforcing that Persephone has to keep going back down to the underworld?"
Very
She asked
smart
me
woman, Mum.
when she asked about it. When she asked what we had talked about in our conversation, I told her, "Well, we talked about Persephone, and the story goes like this." And she said, "But why does she have to? What's stopping? What's what's the punishment if she doesn't?"
Yeah.
And I bring that up because the answer is the myths aren't saying, they're saying this is what happens. It's like asking what happens if winter doesn't come. Well,
Hmm.
winter does come. This is the order of the universe. It's describing the
Yes.
order of the universe. This is the myths are to help us to understand how the realm of the gods functions,
Mm.
not to understand how we wish everything functioned, how
Yes.
it functions. And so there's lessons in here for us, and we can say, well, I wish it wasn't like this, or I wish it wasn't like that, or why doesn't Persephone just rebel? Well,
Mm.
it's just not the way the universe works. The gods play out their will
Hmm.
in the heavens and on the earth and under the earth, and we would be wise to understand that and to order our lives in accordance with the way things are. And
Mm.
that's what ritual Ritual is honoring the gods and bringing,
Well, it's what astrology is too, Dave.
yes, and bringing it into our life. And
That's
so
right.
honoring, observing, hey, the new moon is doing this,
Hmm.
and
How can I
observing
work with that energy?
how can I work.
I understand it.
And
Yeah.
having a new moon ritual is, or in
Mm.
some way, ordering your life in accordance with the motions of the moon
Mm.
is honoring the gods. Or,
And
you
on
know,
that topic, if I may,
yes,
there's a new moon coming up next week, conjunct with Algol. You might want to check out my Patreon family video, just a little bit of promo there, because this moon is going to be a doozy. It's probably going to be the most important moon of the year, aside from the eclipses. So,
so yeah, so no,
new
that's
moon
on
ritual.
topic. So I'm
Mm,
in answering your question. I may seem like I'm evading the question, but really what I'm saying is there's lessons in here for us to ponder and think about and
mm.
incorporate into our life. And it's not like, oh, this must be a patriarchy commentary on, they're pushing women down. I really don't believe that these ancient myths are that. I
Mm.
believe what they are is describing to us the the forces at
Absolutely.
play in the universe.
Absolutely.
And the forces, there's give and take, and there's uh,
Masculine,
good and
feminine
bad, and
forces,
there's
yin and
hope,
yang.
and there's
Yes. Mm.
these different plagues that torment mankind, but there's also hope. And there's the gift of Prometheus, but there's also the retribution and the punishment. And we have to bring our lives into, harmony with the the forces of the cosmos, but we also have this divine spark that we were given
Mm.
that we should use.
I
That,
agree. And
that we
that's
should.
one of the reasons why I love astrology because it is working with what I believe are energetic forces of the universe and understanding the shadow and the light of Mars and Saturn and all the planets gives us a sense of understanding and power over our own lives instead of just being buffeted by the forces of life. We can consciously choose to work with the forces or against the forces. And the forces are what they are, but it's our knowledge and understanding that gives us that sense of being able to energetically respond in an appropriate or a more blessed way. When
Absolutely. And I think curiosity, that Pandora is known for her curiosity. That is a gift. Being curious
Oh, I agree.
is a gift, and we should unleash our curiosity more and be
Right?
more curious and be like my mother's, why? That that was a great question. I hadn't ever thought of it. And
Mhm.
it leads to some lessons. But it's important to have curiosity. And I'll just also end with this thought that I've been looking into a lot of Confucian teachings, and Confucius from ancient China. Kongzi is Confucius is how they've changed his name and Latinized it. I think the Jesuits did that when they when they came over. They said,
Maybe
"Oh, well,
China, yeah.
let's talk about this teachings of Kongzi. How are we going to put it into English?" And they said Confucius, but Confucian thought says that we should make our whole life a ritual. And there's a passage in the sayings of Confucius, Kongzi, in the Analects where I think it's in the Analects, he's asked by one of his followers, should we pay attention to ritual or not pay attention to ritual? Is it constricting or outdated? Should we get rid of it? Should we be more free? And Confucius answers and says, you should never say yes or no unless it's in accordance with ritual. You should never take a sip of tea or, put on your shirt unless it's in accordance with ritual. And it might sound like, oh, well, that's sure restricting.
That's pretty heavy, yeah.
We
Yeah.
just have to follow every rule. But the way I've heard it explained by Confucian scholars is what he's saying is you should make your whole life ritual, meaning you should make you should strive to be in line with the invisible realm, the divine realm, the realm of nature, that, the forces of the cosmos.
Mm.
And so every act, if you do every act in an attitude of dignity and respect for the gods and the forces and ritual, it's actually very uplifting and freeing as opposed to constricting.
Mhm.
And so and by observing when the new moon is, or when the sun moves into Pisces and out of,
Mhm.
you know, Aquarius, or
Aquarius.
whatever, being in tune with everything that's going on. Oh, it's a new day. Okay, when I wake up, this is what I do. I think about all the things I'm grateful for before I reach for my phone and look at all the things I should be stressed about. All those things that came out of Pandora's box are all right there on your phone. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. But there's lots of lessons in there for us to think about and
I
incorporate.
love it. This has been beautiful, and it is such a rich, complex myth, as
Mm.
most creation stories all around the world are. So it has been wonderful to dip our toe into this. I don't know, maybe in the future there might be cause to come back to look at Prometheus in some way. He's certainly a fascinating character, as is Atlas, as is Pandora, as is. I'm having trouble saying it again.
Epimetheus.
Ugh. Thank you. Um, it is fascinating. But friends who are out there in viewerland, may you enjoy this week as it unfolds and Mercury moves into the Epimetheus phase of his cycle, and the review and the harvest that it may also bring you. Thanks for joining us, Dave, and we'll be back again soon with some more mythology and celestial connections for you to enjoy. Thank you.